Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The monitor started screaming and a nurse rolled me onto my side. I grabbed the rail and felt my hands slip on sweat. Someone yelled for more people and I heard the word crash. I am Megan, 29, and in that moment I thought this was how I checked out. My doctor slid in fast and pressed hard on my stomach. A sharp weight exploded through my body and I actually screamed back. I knew birth would hurt, but this felt like my insides tearing open. I remember thinking this was not pain anymore, this was danger. My husband, Jason, stood near my feet with his back against the wall. His eyes were huge, but he kept glancing toward the door. He muttered that he had not eaten all day and his voice shook. I heard that and thought, you can eat later if I live. Someone said my blood pressure number out loud and the room went tighter. Another voice said the baby did not like this and my throat locked. The doctor leaned close and told me they needed to move fast. Then came the sentence that still rings in my head, emergency surgery now. They pushed a clipboard at me and a pen hit my fingers. The paper shook so hard under my hand that the lines blurred. I signed anyway because what else was I going to do? In the corner, Jason asked how long this would take and my stomach dropped. The bed started moving and the ceiling lights slid past in blocks. I tried to focus on breathing, but it came out as a whine. Jason walked beside the bed and gripped the rail near my head. He whispered that I was scaring him and I wanted to laugh. Right before the doors swung open, he bent close to my ear. He told me not to leave him alone with a kid. It was half joke and half plea and I clung to it. I remember thinking my last thought might be about his panic. Inside the operating room, everything moved faster than my brain. They shifted my legs, pulled wires, spoke in short, clipped bursts around me. A mask hovered above my face and I tasted chemical on my tongue. Someone told me to count, and I wondered if my son would remember me at all. When I opened my eyes again, the world felt sliced in half. Bright shapes, dull beeping, a weight sitting on my chest like guilt. I tried to move my legs and nothing answered, not even a twitch. For a second I believed they had taken more than the baby. A nurse leaned over and told me I had done great. That word felt wrong because I had been unconscious for it. My throat scraped when I asked about the baby and my voice cracked. She smiled tight and said he was fine, which is when I started crying. Jason appeared near the bed with his phone tucked in his hand. His face looked tired but also oddly excited, which annoyed me. He told me they pulled our son out fast and he was loud. I lay there listening and waiting for him to mention. I almost bled out. He finally added that things got messy and they had to work hard. Then he kissed my forehead like that fixed the part where I nearly vanished. He told me I freaked him out and that he really thought I was gone. I wanted to say me too, but the words stuck behind the fear. They rolled in the bassinet and I saw my son for the first time. His face was scrunched and his hands jerked in tiny angry moves. Jason lifted him for a photo and told our baby to meet his mom. I smiled on instinct while my incision burned so deep I almost screamed again. The nurse helped me guide him to my chest and he tried to latch. Every tug pulled through my belly and up my spine and I shook. Jason adjusted the blanket and joked that the baby already stole his spot. I laughed once, then bit it off because even breathing hurt like a knife. Later, when the room finally quieted, a doctor came back to explain. She said there had been heavy bleeding and they gave me more blood. She mentioned a tear inside and a long repair and future checkups. I stared at the ceiling and realized they were giving me the short version. Jason asked how long recovery would take and if there were restrictions. His voice sounded calm, almost businesslike, and it scraped my nerves. The doctor listed things I should not do and paused before the last one. She said no intercourse for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer, and Jason exhaled hard. He did not argue with her there, but he did not hide his reaction. His shoulders dropped and he rubbed his face like someone canceled a trip. I caught that movement even through the haze and felt something twist. In that bed I had just brushed past death and he was already counting days. That night the room dimmed and it was just us and the baby. My body shook from chills and every shift sent fire through my abdomen. Jason scrolled on his phone in the chair and yawned in loud bursts. He said he would probably crash soon because the whole thing wore him out. I asked him to bring the baby closer and he did, a little clumsy. He placed our son in my arms, then took another picture and grinned. He told me my hair looked wild and that it was kind. Love hard. I remember wanting to smack his arm and also wanting him to keep talking. At some point in the early hours, he leaned on the rail near my hip. He looked me up and down, not in a mean way, just blunt. Then he smirked and asked when we would be able to smash again. The word hit me harder than any contraction and I froze. I stared at him and then at the bandage across my stomach. I said I could not even sit up yet without feeling like I was splitting. I told him straight that sex was off the table for a long time. He chuckled and said he guessed he would just have to be patient. Even then, there was a tiny edge in his tone that I ignored. I chalked it up to stress and shock and the ugly day we had. I believed that almost dying bought me some grace in our marriage. I did not understand that in his mind I had just made a promise I could not keep. The first night at home, I soaked through everything before midnight. I shuffled to the bathroom holding my stomach with one hand. Blood ran down my legs and my vision went fuzzy at the edges. Behind the door, I heard Jason complain that the game was still on. I called his name and my voice came out thin and weird. The door opened a crack and he leaned on the frame with a sigh. When he saw the mess, his eyes widened and he finally stepped in. He handed me a fresh pad like he was passing a napkin at lunch. I cleaned up as fast as I could with shaking hands. Every bend sent a hot line of pain through that stitched area. I remember thinking my body felt like borrowed equipment that barely worked. Jason checked his watch and told me the food would get cold. Back in bed, I tried to lower myself without tearing anything open. The mattress might as well have been concrete the way it met my hips. Jason handed me a plate and balanced the baby against his shoulder. He joked that our kid already knew how to ruin dinner plans. I forced a laugh and tried to chew around the knot in my throat. He commented that once everything healed, we could finally enjoy ourselves again. He clicked his tongue like he was talking about a vacation on hold. I swallowed sauce and resentment at the same time and said nothing. The next morning, my whole body felt like one long bruise. I tried to get out of bed without waking the baby beside me. When my feet hit the floor, I almost blacked out from the pool. I grabbed the dresser and stayed there breathing like I had run stairs. Jason walked in scrolling on his phone with one hand. He glanced up and asked if I was ready to start moving again. Apparently his boss wanted him online by 9 and he looked annoyed. He shifted the baby into my arms and said I had this. I cradled my son and focused on not screaming every time he wiggled. Jason adjusted his shirt and checked himself in the mirror with a smirk. He mumbled something about needing coffee and a real night of sleep. I stared at the back of his head and felt this slow burn start. Later that week, his friend FaceTimed him while I burped the baby. The call was loud enough that I heard every stupid line. They joked about dads being exhausted and living on cold takeout. Then his friend asked if we had reconnected yet and my ears rang. Jason shifted the phone and turned away from me toward the hallway. His voice dropped a little and he said, "Not even close, man." He laughed and called it a long streak with zero action at home. Those words hit harder than they should have and I went quiet. I bounced the baby and stared at the wall while they kept talking. Jason told his friend the doctor had slapped him with a waiting period. He added that he hoped the deadline was real because he was losing it. I realized he remembered that number better than he remembered my meds. That night I tried to bring it up in a soft way. We lay in bed with the baby monitor buzzing on the nightstand. I mentioned how rough the recovery still felt and asked for patience. He rolled onto his back and exhaled like I had nagged him. He turned toward me and rested his arm across my waist. His fingers brushed the edge of my bandage and I flinched hard. He pulled back and stared like I had offended him on purpose. Then he joked that I reacted like he was some stranger off the street. I told him my whole lower body felt like it went through a grinder. I reminded him out loud that they had stitched me inside and out. He nodded and said he knew and that he was not a monster. Then he added that men had needs and his tone stayed too casual. For a few days things stayed tense but quiet on the surface. He helped with diapers when I asked and sometimes rocked the baby. He also made sure I saw him lifting bottles with exaggerated effort. The unspoken message was clear: look how much I am doing here. One afternoon I caught him scrolling through an article on his phone. The headline mentioned how soon couples resumed intimacy after childbirth. He noticed me watching and turned the screen, but not fast. Enough, He laughed it off and said he was just curious about averages. I asked if I was supposed to compete with some chart on his screen. My voice came out sharper than I meant and my hands shook. He shrugged and said he was just trying to know what was normal. That word lodged in my chest because apparently I had become the opposite. Around week 4, I had my follow-up appointment with the doctor. Sitting in the car on the way there hurt more than I expected. Jason drummed his fingers on the steering wheel the whole drive. He asked if this was the visit where she cleared me for everything. In the exam room, the paper under me crinkled with every flinch. The doctor checked the stitches and asked about pain during daily stuff. I thought about lying, but the ache won and I admitted it fully. She frowned and mentioned possible trauma and suggested I go slow for a while. Jason leaned against the wall with his arms folded across his chest. He asked the doctor if it was safe physically for us to be close. His eyes flicked toward me once, then back to the doctor like a negotiation. She replied that my body was still mending and our focus should be my comfort. He nodded, but I saw his jaw tighten in that stubborn way. On the drive home, he kept his gaze on the road and gripped tight. He finally spoke and said the doctor did not say never. He stressed that word like it was proof that I was dragging this out. I stared out the window and counted light poles until we reached the house. In my head, I kept replaying the delivery room and the panic. Out loud, I told him I still woke up thinking I was bleeding out. He pursed his lips and asked if I had thought about therapy yet. That suggestion should have felt caring, but it landed sideways. His tone sounded more like fix yourself so I can get my life back. I told him I would consider it once I could walk without wincing. He grunted in reply and grabbed the baby carrier from the back seat. Inside, he set the carrier down and pulled me into a quick hug. His hand slid lower than my waist and I stiffened on reflex. He noticed and stepped back with this half-offended, half-wounded look. He muttered that if I kept doing that he would forget how to touch me. The next weekend, his parents dropped by to meet the baby properly. We did the smiles and photos and fake light conversation around the couch. At some point, his mom joked that they would have a grandkid every year. Jason laughed and tossed out a line about our bedroom being closed for business. They all chuckled like it was a harmless little remark. I felt my face heat up and I pretended to adjust the baby. Under the polite noise, he added that he was trying to be patient. His dad clapped his shoulder like he deserved a medal for waiting. That night, I went into the kitchen to wash bottles and breathe. My abdomen throbbed and my head kept replaying that living room scene. Jason walked in behind me and reached around to rest his hands on my hips. He pressed closer and whispered that his parents really assumed we were still active. I tried to step forward, but the counter blocked me and I froze. I told him my brain still connected touch with fear and hospital monitors. I said I wanted closeness that did not lead anywhere yet. He sighed into my neck and asked how long that phase was going to last. The way he said phase made me feel like a problem to solve. I turned around and leaned on the counter to keep myself steady. I told him flat that I was not ready to be a wife like before. He tapped his fingers on the granite and looked past me toward the hallway. Later, when I finally got a moment alone, I grabbed his tablet. I was looking for a show to distract myself during a feeding. A notification popped up from his calendar with a title that froze me. It read Day 38 and then a little note about no intimacy. I opened the app and scrolled through earlier entries with shaking hands. There were reminders every few days with comments like nothing yet or still nothing. Some had annoyed emojis that would have been funny in any other context. The dates lined up perfectly with the days since the hospital. I sat there on the couch with the baby asleep against my chest. My heart pounded in my ears while I stared at those entries. To him, this was a countdown, a drought, a statistic to track. To me, it felt like he had turned my trauma into some kind of scoreboard. When he walked into the room, I locked the tablet and set it aside. He flopped down on the opposite end of the couch and stretched. His eyes drifted to the baby, then to my legs tucked under a blanket. He joked that my quarantine should be over soon and shot me a quick grin. I asked what that was supposed to mean and tried to keep my tone calm. He lifted one shoulder and called it a joke about our situation. Then he added that his countdown was almost up if the doctor was right. My pulse spiked because I realized he was not just talking in general anymore. I told him I did not care about whatever internal clock he had set. I reminded him that the doctor mentioned going slow and listening to my body. He rolled his eyes and said my body got a whole human out here already. Then he stared at the ceiling and muttered that he was getting tired of excuses. That word echoed in my brain long after he left the room. I sat there in the dim light with my son breathing against me. Every spot that hurt felt louder, like my own flesh was arguing back. I could feel the line between us stretching thin, and I knew something would snap soon. He slid his hand under my shirt and my whole body locked. I grabbed his wrist hard and pulled it away from my stomach. The baby monitor hummed on the nightstand while we stared at each other. My heart raced like I was back under those hospital lights again. "What are you doing?" My voice came out thin and scratchy. He blinked at me like I had asked something ridiculous. "We never do anything anymore." His fingers flexed once against the sheet. He looked annoyed, not confused, which made my skin crawl. I pushed myself up on my elbows and my incision screamed in protest. "I am not ready." The words shook, but I forced them out. "My body hurts and my brain goes right back to the surgery." He blew out a sharp breath and looked toward the ceiling. "You look fine now." He tapped the blanket near my leg. "Doctor cleared you for most stuff. You are not made of glass." He said it like he was giving me a pep talk before a workout. Inside, I just felt small and cornered and weirdly embarrassed. "I am not doing this tonight." I pulled the blanket up to my chest. "I am scared and sore and I do not trust my own body." He swung his legs off the bed and sat on the edge. "So what? I am supposed to live like a roommate forever." That line hit me right in the guts. "Forever? I never said forever." My voice rose an octave. "I said I cannot right now. I do not know when I will." He turned his head and looked at me like I had confessed a crime. "You realize months are passing." His shoulders stayed rigid and tight. "Other couples bounce back way faster than this. People talk about it." He rubbed his jaw like he was doing math in his head. I could feel my face heat even though I had done nothing wrong. "Good for them." I tucked my knees closer and winced. "I almost died in that room. I am not over it." My chest felt heavy and my words came out in quick jerks. "I hear alarms every time someone touches me below my ribs." He twisted around and planted his feet on the floor. "I get that it was intense." His tone stayed flat and distant. "But what about me? What am I supposed to do with all this?" He waved his hand down his body in a quick, irritated gesture. I laughed once, a short, ugly sound that startled even me. "You are asking that like we did not almost lose everything." He glanced at the monitor, then back at me with narrowed eyes. "You keep saying almost. It did not happen. We are fine now." That sentence hurt more than any stitch ever could. "We are not fine." I press my palm to my sternum. I wake up shaking. I see blood every time I close my eyes. He shrugged one shoulder like that was an overreaction I should fix. "Maybe you should talk to someone then." His words landed cold and sharp. "Because from where I am standing this is turning into a permanent thing." He looked over his shoulder at me, eyebrows lifted in challenge. It sounded less like concern and more like a warning. I swallowed and forced myself to say it clearly. "I cannot have sex right now, maybe not for a while yet. I do not know how long, there is no date on it." In my head, I am still bleeding out on that table. He stared at me for a long second without blinking. "So you're telling me I just do not get a wife anymore?" My stomach twisted because I knew what he meant by wife. "You are a mother now and that is it." "That is not what I said." I shook my head hard. "I still want you near me. I want hugs. I want us. I just cannot go from almost dying to porn star overnight." My voice cracked on that last word and I hated how it sounded. He turned fully and leaned his elbows on his knees. "You know what this sounds like?" His mouth pulled into a crooked line. "It sounds like I am supposed to deliver on everything and you deliver on nothing." He let that hang between us like some kind of verdict. I stared at his back and felt my eyes burn. "You think I wanted this? You think I like feeling broken?" He lifted his hands in a quick half shrug without turning around. "Does not matter what you wanted, this is where we are." Then he dropped the sentence that will always stick in my brain. "If you cannot deliver as a wife, I will just deliver for myself." He laughed right after like it was a joke he nailed. My chest squeezed so tight I actually had trouble breathing for a second. I forced a shaky smile because I want it to be a bad joke. "Yeah, whatever, go handle it yourself." I tried to sound light. Inside, something cold settled low in my belly and stayed there. Looking back, that was the moment he told me the plan. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand and stood up. "I am going to shower," his tone was short and final. He turned the screen as he picked it up, face down in his palm. At the time, I noticed the movement and then brushed it away. The next morning, the air in the kitchen felt heavy and weird. He moved around like a coworker, not a husband who slept beside me. "Do you work late tonight?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah, I picked up some extra hours." He stared into his mug. "Is everything okay at work?" I watched his jaw flex once. "It is just busy. I cannot be home all the time." He opened a cabinet a little harder than necessary and closed it fast. I heard the unsaid part clearly, especially not when nothing happens here. Later that day, he came home in a nicer shirt than usual. He smelled strongly of cologne, sharper than his normal everyday scent. "Going somewhere?" I bounced the baby on my shoulder and tried casual. "Guys are grabbing a drink." I told them I would show up. On a weeknight, I adjusted the baby and felt my stitches tug. "Yeah, I deserve one night out that is not diapers and crying." He checked his watch and tapped his keys against his thigh. It sounded less like a question and more like a declaration. "Can you at least text me when you are heading back?" He slid his phone into his pocket and nodded once. "Sure, do not wait up though, might be late." My stomach dipped, but I forced myself to say have fun. He did not text until close to midnight. Just a quick message that read alive chill and nothing else. I stared at it while rocking the baby in the dark living room. Every time the house creaked, I pictured headlights that never appeared. When he finally walked in, he dropped his keys on the counter. "You are still up?" His eyebrows rose like that annoyed him. "You never said when you would be back." My voice came out tired. "I told you not to stay awake, you worry too much." He brushed past me to grab water and I caught a glimpse of his phone. The screen was already locked and notifications were hidden now. He set it on the table face down like it had become fragile glass. Before all this, he used to leave it anywhere without thinking. "Who have you been talking to so much lately?" I tried to sound calm. He froze for a heartbeat, then gave a quick humorless laugh. "Work group chat, fantasy league, normal stuff. You think I have a secret life?" He looked at me like I was ridiculous for even asking. "I almost died having our child. I'm a little jumpy now." The words came out sharper than I planned and hung between us. He rubbed his forehead and shook his head once in frustration. "This is what I am talking about. Everything turns into drama now." He grabbed his phone and walked toward the bedroom without another word. I stood in the kitchen with the baby against my chest. My mind ran laps between am I crazy and is he hiding something? I chose the softer answer because the harder one terrified me. A few nights later, he was on a video call while I folded tiny clothes. The guy on the screen laughed loud and teased him about being chained. Jason smirked and leaned back in his chair, eyes glittering in a way I hated. "Man, my house is basically a dead zone right now." My hand stopped moving and I stared at his reflection in the dark window. "Newborn life, no sleep, no fun, nothing." He spread his arms wide. The friend whistled and told him to escape before he lost his mind. Jason grinned and said, "Trust me, I'm finding ways to deal." I swear the air shifted on that last line. He glanced over his shoulder and met my eyes for half a second. Then he looked away like I was just another piece of furniture. The friend laughed again and the sound grated down my spine. That night after the call, I tried one more time. I climbed into bed slowly and lay on my side facing him. "Can we just talk without fighting?" My voice was quiet and raw. His shoulders rose and fell in a long, annoyed breath. "I miss you." I reached out and traced a line on the sheet. "Not just that part, I miss us joking and touching without fear. I want to get back there, but I cannot skip over what happened." My throat tightened and I blinked hard to keep tears away. He rolled toward me and rested his head on his hand. "Then do not skip it, just stop getting stuck in it." His thumb brushed my forearm once, almost tender, then pulled back. "I am trying to be patient, but I am not a monk. You have your phone, you have your hand, use those." It came out harsh but also desperate, which I hated. He gave a short laugh that did not reach his eyes. "That gets old fast. I want my wife, not a roommate with Wi-Fi." There it was again, that word wife used like a job title. "Late?" He looked straight at me, voice low and steady now. "At some point I am going to stop asking and just handle things. You already told me you cannot deliver. I heard you loud and clear. I felt my chest go cold even as my face burned. Handle what exactly? I asked it even though I knew I would hate the answer. He shrugged one shoulder and reached for his phone on the nightstand. Relax, I will deliver for myself if I have to, no big deal. He unlocked the screen with a quick practiced motion and turned away. The glow lit his profile while I lay there frozen beside him. In my head, I tried to file it under empty talk and bad humor. I did not realize he was already practicing living separate lives under one roof. The receipt slipped out of his jeans and landed at my bare feet. I bent to grab the crumpled paper and my stomach tightened. The baby dozed in the swing a few feet away, breathing soft and steady. I smoothed the receipt open with my thumb and saw the hotel name. For a second, my brain tried to make it something harmless. Conference, work, dinner, maybe he dropped a friend off somewhere last minute. Then my eyes hit the time stamp in the checkout time. It matched one of the nights he came home late from the office. My fingers went numb while I stared at the amount. Too high for a drink, too low for some group event. There was a room number written in quick messy numbers at the top. I felt that same cold drop I felt before the surgery. I looked over at my son just to steady myself. His hand twitched in his sleep and his mouth made a small pout. I told myself I was overthinking, that postpartum brain made me paranoid. Then I noticed the second slip of paper still tucked in the pocket. This one was smaller, almost folded into a tiny square. I shook the jeans and it fluttered onto the couch beside me. It was a loyalty card for the same hotel chain. 3 visits stamped, 1 more and you earn a free night. My throat went dry so fast I had trouble swallowing. He had not mentioned any travel, not one single night away. The baby stirred and let out a little whimper that snapped me back. I tucked him closer with one arm and grabbed the jeans again. I checked every pocket like I was looking for stolen property. Wallet, loose change, a couple of crumpled receipts from drive-through stops. Nothing else jumped out as wrong and I almost let myself relax. Then I remembered how he guarded his nightstand lately like it was locked. I carried the hotel papers with me down the hallway. Each step pulled at my healing scar and kept me grounded in my body. I opened the drawer on his side of the bed and froze. Right on top sat a box of condoms we never touched. We had never used them, not once in our marriage. We had been trying for our son when everything went sideways. The top of the box was peeled back in a rough torn line. I counted quickly without meaning to and knew some were missing. My hands shook so hard I had to sit on the mattress. The baby monitor buzzed faintly from my side of the table. I stared at those stupid little wrappers and heard his voice in my head. If you cannot deliver, I will just handle it myself. I almost put everything back and pretended I had not seen it. There was a part of me that wanted ignorance more than proof. Then my knee bumped the side of the drawer and something slid underneath. A slim black rectangle thudded against the back panel and stopped. I reached in and my fingertips brushed a cold, hard edge. I pulled out a second phone I had never seen before. It was basic, no case, no stickers, nothing to connect it to him. My heart pounded so loud I could feel it in my teeth. For a long moment I just held it and stared. I knew what a hidden phone usually meant, and it was not gaming. Still, I tried to talk myself down while the screen stayed dark. Maybe it was old from before, forgotten in the clutter. I pressed the power button with my thumb and the screen lit up. Not old, battery charged, recent wallpaper of some default abstract pattern. A passcode screen popped up and my stomach dipped again. I tried his usual code and watched the phone unlock without hesitation. His Messages app was right there on the home bar. I told myself not to open it, that I was invading privacy. Then I remembered my body torn open in that operating room. I touched the icon and the conversation list sprang up immediately. Her name was not saved as anything obvious or dramatic. Just 3 letters and an emoji, casual and stupid and smug. Their thread sat right at the top with fresh timestamps from last night. I tapped it and the screen filled with words I can still recite. Glad you made it out again, missed you. Could not stay long, wife was watching the clock. I will make it worth it next time, promise. My vision blurred, but I kept scrolling anyway. Earlier entries told the real story in awful little slices. First time in an actual bed since the baby needed that. Your husband must be clueless. House is a dry zone, I would go crazy without you. Dry zone, dry spell, dead whatever, he loved that type of phrase. There were photos too, framed to crop out faces, but everything else obvious. The bedspread matched the hotel chain name on the loyalty card. One picture even included the corner of a room service menu. I slapped my hand over my mouth so I would not scream. The baby started fussing in the other room like he felt it. I set the phone down for a second and pressed my fists to my eyes. For a moment, I hated myself for not being surprised. I picked the phone back up and forced myself to keep scrolling. 3 weeks of messages, at least that many meetings. He had sent her the same stupid jokes he used to send me. He even called her a reward after surviving the baby chaos. The worst part was the way he talked about our home. Place is basically a daycare now, nothing else happening there. She turned into a roommate with a kid, not a partner. She told me she cannot do it, what am I supposed to do? There it was in black and white, the story he fed her. Not my wife almost died or she is working through trauma. Just she will not give it up and I have needs. He turned my fear into a punchline for pillow talk. A text from that morning sat there, unread by me until now. Next week same spot, I want round 2. You better, I have been starving at home. Her final reply had a winking emoji that made my skin crawl. I backed out of the thread and saw call history. Short calls on his late work nights, one right before the hotel charges. There was no fight in the messages, no guilt from either side. They talked like this arrangement was completely reasonable. The front door clicked open while I still stared at the screen. I jerked like I had been caught doing something wrong. Keys rattled against the bowl in the entryway and his shoes scuffed. I swallowed hard and slid the hotel papers onto the bedspread. He walked into the bedroom, tugging his collar loose with one hand. He stopped when he saw the drawer wide open beside me. What are you doing? His voice came out sharp before he softened it. His gaze dropped to the extra phone resting near my knee. I picked it up and held it out between us. You forgot something when you left this morning. My hand was surprisingly steady, but my chest felt on fire. He did not reach for it, just stared at me. That is private. He finally stepped forward and tried to grab it. I pulled my arm back and pointed toward the hotel receipts. Is that your privacy too? My voice shook but stayed loud. Because I am trying to understand what kind of plan this is. He glanced at the papers and his jaw tightened instantly. You went through my stuff while I was out. He gestured at the drawer, the jeans on the chair, everything. Like the search was the crime here, not what I found. I laughed, a short harsh sound that barely felt like mine. You left them in your pants on the nursery floor. I picked them up while our infant napped 10 feet away. That is when your double life landed by my foot. He ran a hand through his hair and paced once beside the bed. It is not a double life, you are being dramatic again. He stopped pacing and pointed at the scar under my shirt. You shut me down, you told me you could not do it. My hand flew to my abdomen on instinct, covering the healed line. I told you I was scared, I told you my body felt ruined. I told you I woke up thinking I was dying every night. You heard that and booked a hotel. He flinched but recovered fast, eyes going hard. I booked a room after months of nothing, months. You made it clear you were done being a wife in that way. His tone made it sound like I had filed some official resignation. I never said I was done, I said not yet. I stepped off the bed and felt my legs tremble under me. Not yet is not an invitation to start auditioning replacements. He snorted and folded his arms across his chest. You have no idea what it is like being shut out like that. Coming home every day to cold shoulders and closed doors. Any guy would go nuts, most men would have bilated already. He said it like he was the one holding everything together. I held up the phone again and clicked open the messages. Most men do not log hotel points while their wife heals from emergency surgery. Most men do not tell another woman their house is a dry cave. I tossed the phone onto the mattress and it bounced between us. He watched it land and then looked back at me. You told me yourself you cannot perform right now. You said it again and again, you are too broken for that. He jerked his chin toward the monitor, toward our sleeping child. I am damaged, not disposable, my throat burned as I spoke. You used my worst day as your permission slip. You did not even ask for help or try counseling first. You just found someone who did not scare you. He pressed his tongue against his teeth and smiled without humor. Therapy will not change biology, I still have needs. I handled them without putting pressure on you, and you are still angry. He spread his hands like this baffled him. You think this did not pressure me? I stepped closer, shaking. You think lying, hiding phones, sneaking off to hotels is relief. Every night you came home from her and got into bed with me. I probably still smelled my own fear while you smelled perfume. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, eyes darting to the door. I did not bring anything back here except myself. I was careful, it was just physical. That word hung in the air like something rotten. Nothing about this is just physical, my voice dropped low and flat. You joked with her about our life, you mocked me as some frigid roommate. You tracked our sex life like a stats sheet and shared it with her. You built a whole story where you are the victim. He grabbed the nearest pillow and flung it at the dresser. You are making this bigger than it has to be. I messed up, sure, but I am still here. I did not leave you, I could have. That line hit me harder than anything else he had thrown. That is what you think loyalty is, staying while you cheat. You think the bar is that low for being a partner. My laugh came out broken and wet, and I hated how it sounded. He rolled his eyes and reached for the second phone again. Give it to me, this is over, I will block her. He spoke like we were wrapping up a subscription service. Like it was that simple to close a wound. I stepped on the bed and placed my foot over the device. This is not about blocking one contact. This is about you deciding my trauma was an inconvenience. You punished me for it and called it meeting your needs. For the first time that afternoon, he went quiet. His mouth pressed into a flat line and his eyes narrowed. Finally, he shrugged, a small tired motion that made my stomach lurch. Look, I had to get it somewhere, any man would. That was the moment something in me finally snapped. Not during the surgery, not during the panic or the nightmares. Right there, listening to him call betrayal a natural response. I realized he did not just cheat, he truly believed it was reasonable. I called my sister with the hotel receipt still creased in my fist. The spare phone lay on the table between the baby bottles. She picked up on the second ring and heard my breathing. What happened now? Her voice went alert fast, which almost broke me. He used a hotel rewards card, I blurted it out in one rush. Room number, extra phone, condoms, all of it. There was a beat of silence, then a low curse that sounded like a punch. Send me pictures right now, do not throw anything away. I snapped photos with shaking hands and texted everything over. Screenshots of messages, receipts, the loyalty stamps that made me sick. The baby fussed in the swing and I shushed him on autopilot. On the line, I heard my sister breathing hard like she was pacing. I am coming over, her words came tight and sharp. You are not sitting in that house alone with this. I started to tell her it was fine, that I could handle it. My voice crumbled halfway through, and that answered it for both of us. She showed up still in work clothes, hair pulled back in a rough knot. One look at my face and she reached for the phone on the table. She scrolled through the messages, jaw clenching tighter with every swipe. Okay, this is not flirting, this is a whole side relationship. I told him I could not have sex yet, the confession came out small. I told him I was scared and he said any man would. She dropped the phone onto the table like it burned her hand. You almost died having his kid, and that is his response. I started babbling excuses before I could stop myself. He helped sometimes, he changed a few diapers, he stayed for the surgery. He did not walk out, that has to count for something. I heard how desperate it sounded and wanted to crawl out of my skin. She leaned forward with both palms flat on the table. Listen to yourself, you are giving points for not abandoning you during birth. That is the lowest bar I have ever heard. Her eyes were wet but her voice stayed steady and fierce. What am I supposed to do? The question came out like a whisper. Just blow up our son's life before he can crawl. Pretend this did not happen and hope he gets bored. Wait for the next hotel stamp and call that marriage. She reached over and grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. You call a lawyer, you hear your options, information is not divorce. You do not owe him your body as payment for staying. Her thumb rubbed the back of my hand while my heart pounded. I laughed once, short and humorless, just to release something. A lawyer, I do not even know where to start with that. Google, she shot back so fast it startled me. Or I can text the one my friend used last year. I blinked, your friend got divorced. Yeah, because her husband thought cheating was a stress outlet too. She pulled out her phone and started typing before I could argue. Within a minute she had a name and a number on the screen. Write this down, call tomorrow, just an initial consult. No commitment, no decision, just facts. I stared at the digits like they were radioactive. Part of me wanted to delete them, part of me wanted to memorize. That night Jason came home to a different room. The extra phone was gone, hidden in my bag, but the energy had shifted. I fed the baby on the couch and kept my eyes on the TV. He kicked off his shoes and looked between us, sensing something off. You are quiet, he dropped his keys in their usual bowl. Long day, I moved the bottle to burp our son. My voice felt right on the edge between calm and rage. He watched us for a second, then grabbed a beer from the fridge. I did not confront him again that night. I know that sounds weak, and maybe it was. I listened to him talk about traffic and emails while my mind raced. Every normal word made the secret lawyer number in my phone feel louder. When the baby finally went down, I climbed into bed fully clothed. Jason slid in beside me and reached for my waist out of habit. I shifted away and pretended to fuss with my pillow. He paused, then rolled onto his back with a long, annoyed sigh. The next morning I waited until he left for work. I watched his car pull out, then locked the door behind him. My hands shook as I picked up my phone and dialed the attorney's office. I almost hung up twice before someone answered. Family law, how can we help? The receptionist sounded practiced and calm. My throat closed up and nothing came out at first. I think my husband is cheating and I just had a complicated delivery. The words tumbled together, messy and raw, but they were out. Within 10 minutes, I had an appointment for later that week. I wrote the time on a sticky note and hid it under a cookbook. The secrecy felt gross and necessary at the same time. Like I was the one sneaking around instead of cleaning up his mess. On the day of the meeting, my sister took the baby. Her car seat click sounded like a countdown in my chest. You sure you are okay going alone? She searched my face for wobble. If I do not go now, I will never go. The law office was smaller than I expected and weirdly quiet. I sat on a stiff chair and wiped my palms on my jeans. My mind kept flashing between hospital monitors and hotel stamps. By the time the attorney walked in, I was already dizzy with adrenaline. She introduced herself and opened a notebook with efficient movements. So tell me, what brings you in today? I stared at my hands and forced my mouth to move. Short version, emergency birth, no sex after because I was terrified. I kept going before I could lose my nerve. He complained, he joked, he kept score on his phone. Then I found hotel receipts, condoms, and a second device. I confronted him and he told me any man would do it. Saying it all out loud like that made my stomach churn. It sounded worse arranged in a row than in my head. The attorney watched me with this steady, focused expression. No shock, no eye roll, just measuring and listening. That is a lot, she finally nodded once slowly. I am sorry you are facing this on top of a rough delivery. I felt my throat tighten because that simple acknowledgement hit deep. Jason had never used the word rough unless it was about himself. She asked questions that cut right to the practical stuff. Are you working outside the home right now? Whose name is on the house and the main accounts? Has he ever been physically aggressive or controlling with money? Every answer felt like stepping onto another stone over a river. I told her about him tracking intimacy like a schedule. I told her about the way he guarded his devices and downplayed my trauma. The more I talked, the more something heavy inside me started to shift. From a legal standpoint, this is marital misconduct. Her words landed with the weight of a judge's gavel. You have grounds for separation and for requesting primary custody. You also have every right to feel unsafe continuing as things are. Unsafe, I repeated it, tasting the word slowly. I had been using scared, anxious, dramatic, even crazy. Unsafe sounded different, more accurate, less self-blaming. I felt tears well up, hot and embarrassing, and let them fall. She slid a box of tissues closer and kept going. We can file for legal separation first if that feels less final. He can move out or you can, depending on finances and support. There will be a temporary custody arrangement and a support plan. It sounds like I am blowing up my kid's home. The guilt hit me hard enough, Had I actually leaned back? She held my gaze and did not let me sink into it. You are not blowing it up, you are stopping him from eroding it quietly. That line sat between us like a challenge. I thought about the secret phone and the hotel loyalty stamps. I thought about him tracking my body like a drought chart. I thought about almost dying on a table and apologizing for it later. Okay, my voice came out rough but clear. What does it look like if I separate? She outlined the paperwork, the timelines, the way service worked. She used phrases like petitioner and respondent while my heart hammered. By the end of the meeting, my head throbbed, but my spine felt straighter. She handed me a folder with copies of the forms and a checklist. If you want to move forward, call me and we will file. You are allowed to change your mind, but you are also allowed not to. On the drive home, I sat in the car outside the house for a while. I watched the front door and thought about every fight inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason asking about dinner. The normalcy of it made my hands go cold on the steering wheel. That night after the baby finally settled, I asked him to sit down. He dropped onto the couch with a sigh, already defensive. If this is another lecture about my needs, I am not in the mood. His knee bounced fast, a tell he probably did not notice. This is not about your needs, I kept my tone as flat as possible. I met with a lawyer today. His leg stopped bouncing and he actually laughed once like I was joking. You are not serious over one stupid mistake. It was not one and it was not stupid. You built a whole thing behind my back while I was recovering. You turned me into the punchline for some hotel fling. I am done living like that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on mine. So what now, you going to throw our family in the trash? Hand my son to a judge because I got desperate once. He shook his head like I was the outrageous one here. You did not get desperate, you got entitled. You told yourself my body was a service you were owed. When it stopped on your timeline, you outsourced it. And you still think the real crime is me being angry. He stared at me, something cold slipping into his expression. You are really going to do this over sex? I actually barked out a laugh because I could not hold it in. This is not about sex, this is about respect and safety. I called an attorney, we talked about separation paperwork. If I decide to file, you will get served. His mouth opened and closed once like he lost his script. You would embarrass me at work like that. The fact that his first thought was his reputation stunned me. Not our child, not our home, his image at the office. Your coworkers already think you are a family man. They just do not know how you define family. He stood up and paced, running a hand over his face. You are overreacting, we can fix this, I will cut her off. I will delete everything, we can reset, start over. He reached for my hand and I pulled it back. Reset to what? Me frozen in place while you sulk. You acting like a martyr because you kept a roof over us. Me begging you to see that I am still bleeding on the inside. That is not a reset, that is a loop. We went in circles for another hour, voices rising and falling. At one point the baby cried and we both froze like guilty kids. I scooped him up and walked the hallway while Jason stared at the floor. The decision settled in during those laps, step by step. The next morning I called the attorney back. My voice did not shake this time when I said I wanted to move forward. We went through the documents over the phone, line by line. When I hung up, there was no going back without another entire process. Serving him at home felt dangerous, like it would turn into a brawl. We agreed it would happen at his job in a public space. Knowing that made me sick and relieved all at once. I hated that this was my life now, calculated and strategic. On the day paperwork went out, I pretended it was a regular morning. I packed his lunch mechanically and kissed the top of our son's head. Jason grabbed his bag and glanced at me in the doorway. You good? He asked it like we were roommates sharing rent. I am taking the baby to my sister's later. I kept my tone casual, my hands steady on the high chair. He nodded, already half checked out and thinking about emails. The door closed behind him with a soft click that echoed. Around noon, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I answered with my heart thudding against my ribs. This is the process server, just letting you know it is done. Short, professional, clean, the opposite of my insides. 10 minutes later, Jason's name flashed across my screen. I took a breath and hit accept before I could chicken out. You really sent a stranger to my office with that. His voice came tight and furious, like I had slapped him in public. You cheated on your wife during postpartum and bragged about it. A stranger handing you papers is the least dramatic part here. On the other end, I heard him pacing, breathing hard. They all saw my boss was right there. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. My own anger finally settled into something solid. You did that when you turned our bedroom into a complaint line. Those papers just made it official. He cursed it under his breath and asked if this was really what I wanted. No, I wanted a husband who did not weaponize my trauma. I wanted someone who looked at a near-death birth and chose empathy. I am settling for not sharing a house with someone who treats me like property. There was a long silence, then the call disconnected. He did not come home that night. A short text arrived around dinner saying he was staying with a friend. No apology, no promise, just logistical information. We arranged a time for him to see the baby over the weekend, and that was it. That first night alone, the house felt strangely lighter and eerier. I bathed my son, fed him, and carried him to his crib. Standing there in the doorway, I watched his tiny chest rise and fall. My own scar twinged as I breathed deeply and let myself actually feel. I thought about that delivery room where I thought I was leaving. I thought about the emergency surgery and the way he joked afterward. I thought about every time I said I could not and he heard would not. The line between those two words had almost cost me everything. When I finally crawled into my bed, it was just me and the empty half. No second phone hidden in the drawer, no loyalty cards in his pockets. Just my tired body, my stubborn heart, and a sleeping baby in the next room. For the first time since the hospital, I inhaled without apologizing for taking up air.